Aloha Airlines Flight 243 took off from Hawaii's Hilo International Airport. The flight was cruising peacefully between Hilo and Honolulu when, at 24,000 feet, the weather was glorious, conditions were optimal, but just a few minutes later, a massive boom suddenly jolted the entire plane. Without any warning, the roof covering the first-class cabin was explosively ripped away. Passengers and crew were thrown into a life-or-death struggle. In the chaos, one flight attendant vanished into the sky. Alarms blared, and oxygen masks dropped as the plane hurtled through the atmosphere with a huge hole in its side. It sounds like a nightmare for everyone aboard, but this is not a nightmare, it's reality. Would they be able to make an emergency landing? Would the rest of the plane break apart at any minute? If you want to find out what happened, stay tuned. This is the story of Aloha Airlines Flight 243. April 28, 1988. Hilo International Airport, Hawaii. Aloha Airlines Flight 243 is preparing for a flight to Honolulu, Hawaii. Today, 243 is operated with a Boeing 737-200. This 737 was built in 1969 and delivered to Aloha Airlines as a brand new aircraft. Its registration is N73711, and its name is Queen Liliuokalani, after Liliuokalani. The airframe has only accumulated 35,496 flight hours. However, those hours are over 89,680 flight cycles, owing to its use on short flights. The aircraft is 19 years and 1 month old. The captain of the flight is Robert S., age 44. He is an experienced pilot with 8,500 flight hours, of which 6,700 in the Boeing 737. The first officer is Madeline Mimi T., age 36. She is the very first female pilot in Aloha Airlines history. She also has significant experience flying the 737, having logged 3,500 of her total 8,000 flight hours in this particular Boeing model. Also on board, in the flight deck, is an FAA air traffic controller sitting on the jump seat. In total, there are 90 passengers and 5 crew members on board. At 13:25, Flight 243 departs Hilo Airport. Minutes later, the aircraft just leveled at its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. The flight crew hears a loud clap or whooshing sound, followed by wind noise behind them. Both pilots and the air traffic controller quickly wear their oxygen masks. The captain immediately takes control of the aircraft and initiates an emergency descent. He also extends the speed brakes. Because of ambient noise, the pilots initially use hand signals to communicate. The first officer tunes the transponder to emergency squawk code 7700. She also attempts to notify the Honolulu Air Route Traffic Controller, ARTCC, that the flight is diverting to Maui.
Center, Aloha 243. We are going down. Requesting lower. Center, Aloha 243. Center, Aloha 243.
Because of the cockpit noise level, she can't hear any radio transmissions, and she isn't sure if Honolulu ARTCC heard the communication. Although Honolulu ARTCC did not receive the first officer's initial communication, the controller working Flight 243 observed an emergency code 7700 transponder returned about 23 miles southwest of Kahului Airport, Maui. Starting at 13:48, the controller attempts to communicate with the flight several times without success. As Flight 243 descends through 14,000 feet, the first officer switches the radio to the Maui Tower frequency.
Maui approach, Aloha 243. Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Aloha 243. We are inbound for a landing. Maui Tower, Aloha 243.
Colin Tower, say again.
Maui Tower, Aloha 243. We're inbound for a landing. We are just, west of McKenna. Just to the east of McKenna. Descending out of 13, we are unpressurized. Declaring an emergency.
Is that Aloha 244 in the emergency?
Aloha 243.
246?
Aloha 243.
Aloha 243, say your position.
We're just to the east of McKenna Point. Descending out of 11,000.
Aloha 243, wind 043 at 15. Altimeter 29.99. Just to verify again, you're breaking up. Your call sign is 244, is that correct? Or 243?
243. Aloha 243.
243, the equipment is on the roll. Plan straight on, runway 2, and I'll keep you advised of any wind changes.
We're going to need assistance. We cannot communicate with the flight attendants. We will need assistance for the passengers when we land.
Okay, I understand you're going to need an ambulance, is that correct?
Affirmative.
Aloha. 243, can you give your souls on board and fuel on board?
We have 85, 86, plus 5 crew members and only 2,000 pounds of fuel on board.
The captain begins slowing the airplane down as the flight approaches 10,000 feet. He retracts the speed brakes, removes his oxygen mask, and begins a gradual turn toward Maui's runway 02. At 210 knots, the flight crew can now communicate verbally. Initially, flap 1 is selected, then flap 5. When attempting to extend beyond flaps 5, the airplane becomes less controllable, and the captain decides to return to flaps 5 for the landing. The plane continues to slow to landing speed. However, because the captain finds the airplane less controllable below 170 knots, IAS, he elects to use 170 knots for the approach and landing. At the command of the captain, the first officer lowers the landing gear at the normal point in the approach pattern. The main gear indicates down and locked, however the nose gear position indicator light does not illuminate. The pilots manually try to get the nose gear down. Still, the green indicator light does not illuminate. While advancing the power levers to maneuver for the approach, the captain senses a yawing motion and determines that the left engine has failed. He places the number 1 engine start switch in the flight position in an attempt to start the engine. However, there is no response. As the Boeing 737 nears runway 02, the tower informs the pilots that the nose gear is down. Flight 243 lands on runway 02 at Maui's Kahului Airport at 13:58. 94 of 95 people on board survived. 58-year-old flight attendant Clarabelle L. was sucked out of the aircraft during the decompression. Her body was never found. The NTSB investigated the accident. The Boeing 737-200 was designed to have a 20-year service life and 75,000 flights. This is because pressurization eventually weakens an aircraft's fuselage. The accidental aircraft, N73711, was 19 years old. However, due to Hawaii's short hops, the plane had accumulated 89,680 flight cycles. This resulted in the aircraft suffering from metal fatigue. In airplane line number 291 and before, cold bonding had been utilized, with fasteners used to maintain surface contact in the joint, allowing bonding adhesive to transfer load within the joint. This cold bonded joint used an epoxy-impregnated woven scrim cloth to join the edges of 0.9 mm thick skin panels. These epoxy clothes were reactive at room temperature, so they were stored at dry ice temperature until used in manufacture. The bond is cured at room temperature after assembly. The cold bonding process reduced the overall weight and manufacturing cost. Investigators reveal that Boeing warned airlines, including Aloha, of problems with some early Boeing 737s. If the epoxy isn't applied at exactly the right temperature, or if the panels have dirt on them, the bonding can fail. The Hawaii climate, with its humid and salty air, helps corrosion occur. But instead of grounding planes for a nose-to-tail examination, Aloha made occasional checks, often at night, when those on duty are less alert, working under artificial light. These tiny cracks escaped detection. Investigators by the US NTSB concluded that the accident was caused by metal fatigue exacerbated by crevice corrosion. The NTSB noted that the Boeing 737 is designed with a tear strap every 10 inches in the fuselage. This means that any tear in the fuselage should only be confined to a 10 square inch area to prevent explosive decompression. However, on the accident's 737, there were so many cracks in the fuselage that they simply joined together, running right through the tear straps. Because the roof section was never recovered, what happened during the exact moment the roof separated may never be known. The investigation determined that the quality of inspection and maintenance programs was deficient. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this accident was the failure of the Aloha Airlines maintenance program to detect the presence of significant disbanding and fatigue damage, which ultimately led to the failure of the lap joint at S10L. and the separation of the fuselage upper lobe. Contributing to the accident was the failure of Aloha Airlines management to properly supervise its maintenance force. Aloha Airlines accepted responsibility for the accident due to the poor maintenance of the aircraft. The captain and the first officer returned flying after the accident. What do you think of the pilot's actions during this terrifying flight? Would you have done anything differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more incredible stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.